If you can play this piece on this piano, I'll make you CEO of my company.
Richard Slate threw down the challenge like tossing a velvet-gloved gauntlet. He stepped away from the concert grand in the David Geffen Hall lobby, leaving the spotlight of hundreds of eyes to fall on him as lightly as crystal catching light. The gala audience, donors, board members, silk gowns, tuxedos erupted in delighted murmurs. Laughter rippled outward from the inner circle of sycophants, crisp and hollow. Dozens of heads turned toward a woman in a dark blue polo shirt balancing a tray of crystal glasses. Clara Henderson felt the weight of hundreds of eyes like a chain suddenly thrown across her shoulders. She gripped the tray tighter and kept walking, quick, efficient, invisible, the way she always survived in spaces not built to see her. "She doesn't even know where to put her hands," said Valerie Easton in a scarlet gown loud enough for many to hear. Daniel Brooks, in a navy suit, raised his glass and whispered theatrically to the group around him, "Let the symphony of mistakes begin." Someone waved two fingers like sweeping a floor. Others laughed louder than they needed to. Laughter had found rhythm, so it grew stronger. Richard struck a single key sharp and cutting like a whip and crooked a finger. "You. Yes, you. Come here." Clara froze. For a beat, the whole room tilted toward her marble and glass, bending into a single lens. She felt the tray shiver against her ribs. A young waiter passing by, name tag J, murmured from the corner of his mouth, "Don't mind them." The whisper was a tiny island in the storm. She set the tray down on a side table. The clear chime of metal against glass sliced through a thin veil of mockery, small but heard. Every gaze followed her steps toward the piano. Her low heels made no sound on the carpet, yet the space opened around her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Richard called, reclaiming the center, a bonus performance. "If Miss Henderson plays this piece as I did, she will become CEO of Slate Properties." More laughter. Polite cruel in its refinement. Valerie sipped her drink, smiling into Clara's shirt instead of her face. Daniel lounged like a painted king. Richard leaned close enough that only Clara could hear. "Do you really want to do this? You don't even know where to put your fingers." His breath carried the burn of expensive scotch. Private insults cut deeper than public jeers. Clara closed her eyes for a moment. She heard the squeak of a trash cart in an empty office at 2 a.m., saw fluorescent light stretching endlessly down a hallway. She walked alone. Then something else surfaced: a small Bronx church, a chipped upright piano, winter nights out of tune. Hunger had made her dizzy, but she played until sound grew louder than emptiness. She opened her eyes. Shame no longer touched her the old way. "Are you serious?" Her voice was steady. Richard flicked his hand like a magician. "Of course. In front of everyone, if you play as I did, you're CEO." Somewhere in the back, Mr. Whitman, an old patron with a face like weathered oak, lifted his head. The gala photographer, Miles Brown, slid into position, camera raised. He had that instinct professionals admit only later this was about to matter. "I accept," Clara said. The chuckles died instantly. The joke fell like lead. When dignity answers a performance in its own grammar, the whole room is forced to learn a new language. Richard stepped aside with exaggerated gallantry, bowing as he pulled out the bench. "Your throne, Miss Henderson. Enjoy your moment of fame." Polite applause, patronizing, condescending. Clara sat. The leather squeaked small but alive, as if the bench itself knew it carried more than one body. She placed her hands on her lap. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Her shoulders dropped a notch. Her spine found its line. Richard folded his arms, smiling thin as a blade. Valerie shifted for a better view. Daniel muttered something that made his neighbor grin. Jay stood at the crowd's edge tray. empty eyes fixed on Clara as if staring hard enough could keep her standing. The hall tuned itself. You could hear the faint hum of chandeliers, the click, click, click of Richard's wristwatch, a hidden metronome. Miles's camera flashed twice, then stopped as though even it knew to hold its breath. Clara opened her eyes, lifted her hands. Her fingertips hovered above the keys, trembling once, then steady. There was no escape and no need for one. The worst had already been spoken. The entire room held its breath with her. She let her fingers fall. The first note rang full and clear, like the click of a lock opening. The second was the floor beyond the door. The third was a passage, and before anyone realized they were standing on it, the passage had become a road. Laughter died in half-bloom. Faces froze between disdain and awe. Sound rose into the vaulted ceiling and washed the air as it fell. Clara's hands no longer shook. They moved with the certainty that comes only when you've done something for years with no witnesses but the ones you carry inside. Her phrases knew how to breathe. The melody knew how to bind. She did not play like someone proving a point. She played like someone telling the truth. Impossible, Mr. Whitman whispered, not in mockery, but because the word he had was too small for what he was seeing. Valerie's glass trembled. A thin line of champagne slid down red silk unnoticed. Daniel leaned forward not to strike, but because his body forgot the posture of superiority. Miles missed 3 measures before jolting back, the camera strap hot against his neck. He framed Clara's face, the piano lid gleaming like a mirror, and the row of shoulders behind, all tilting toward a new center of gravity. The music climbed. Inside, it lived the nights of fluorescent corridors, the mornings when rent came to a child's fever, breaking at dawn the taste of coffee without sugar because sugar cost extra. Inside, it lived other nights too. Women and men in a small church humming softly, not because they knew the part, but because they needed to. Every discipline carries its faith, and every faith must walk by discipline. When the final cadence appeared, it did not ask permission. It fell with the weight of a verdict deliberated in private for many years. Silence. 1 clap, 2, 3. Then the hall rose like thunder beneath crystal. People stood because their bodies needed a way to say, "I was wrong." Clara did not spring up to bow. She sat still, eyes closed, as if the applause were warm rain washing dust from places she could never reach alone. When she rose, the wave of applause swelled again. Richard clapped too, he had to, but the sound of his palms was hollow like striking an empty box. Faces turned toward him not with admiration, but with expectation edged in judgment. "Keep your word." Richard, a voice rang from the middle rows. It was a key, and others took turns turning it. "Keep your word, keep your word." The words found their rhythm. A slogan only becomes a slogan when it makes its target afraid. Richard swallowed, flashing the smile that had once bought houses and men. It was only a joke, just to lighten the mood. Even at a gala, boos have their etiquette, but they are still boos. They bloomed at the corners and rolled to the center. Mr. Whitman lifted his chin and spoke loud enough without shouting. "We all saw what she did. Perhaps she has more discipline and talent than many of us here." Applause again this time, not for music, but for rearranging the furniture in everyone's mind. Clara walked toward Richard. Her face showed no triumph, only steadiness. "Mr. Slate, keep your promise." The room hummed with a low current of moral clarity. Miles captured the photo he knew would outlive the night, the woman in a polo shirt standing tall before a man trapped in his own words. The grand piano glowing at the center like an altar that had finally chosen its god. Richard lifted his hands in a gesture, half shrug, half surrender, his voice thinner than intended. "Fine. I acknowledge what you've done tonight. No one cheered for him. People don't applaud the sun after years of pretending it doesn't rise. Clara turned back to the piano, touched the lid with her fingertips, the way one thanks a friend you cannot hug in public. She faced the hall. Her eyes glistened but did not spill. "This is not my victory," she said softly, yet everyone heard. "Music has always been my refuge. Tonight I only found the courage to share it. The silence that followed was no longer contempt. It was respect. They did not look at her shirt. They looked at her." Valerie lowered her glass, unsure where to put her hands. Daniel closed his mouth, catching the dim outline of a self that might exist if he tried harder. Somewhere behind Jay exhaled a small breath, but his own relief. Miles lowered the camera to let his eyes be eyes. He would send the photo, write the caption later, but he already knew the picture carried its own words. Keep your word. Clara asked for no contract, no title. She did not repeat the demand. She had asked for the only thing that mattered, respect. The rest belonged to time, and to a man forced to live inside the echo of his own vow. She retraced her path through a corridor of people who had once tried to laugh her small, now parting to let her pass. The hush behind her was the hush after a storm. The air had changed, and everyone knew it, even if no one yet spoke of it. That night at Lincoln Center would not be remembered for a billionaire's display. It would be remembered for the moment a woman refused to vanish from sight, for the way a room full of power learned to listen. The grand piano had served as witness stand. The jury had already delivered its verdict without saying guilty. Richard lingered a beat too long, his hands still clapping without sound. He adjusted a cufflink because there was nothing else left to adjust. Somewhere in his head the chant matched his watch's tick-click. Keep your word, click, keep your word, click. Outside, the city remained the city taxis, steam from grates, a million windows lit by a million kinds of night. Somewhere, a small church locked its doors against the cold, and a piano waited for morning. When the final applause drained from the crystal ceiling like a retreating tide, the great hall swayed slightly, then broke into clusters of whispers. People parted to make way for Clara Henderson, her hands still warm from the keys. Jay Lee slipped through, offering a water bottle, his voice low enough for only the two of them. "Here, drink a little so your throat won't dry out." She nodded softly, fingertips brushing the cool plastic. Valerie Easton stood in front of her, empty glass in hand, an apology caught between her lips and her pride. I'm sorry." That moment, "I didn't." Clara spared her the awkwardness with a small nod. No cheap grace, no sharp retaliation. Just release. Mr. Whitman stepped forward, his silver beard glinting under the lights. "I'm Whitman. If it bothers you, don't answer me now. But I don't think tonight should end here." He handed her an old business card, thick paper edges worn. She took it, sliding it between fingers that still carried the scent of ivory keys. Miles Brown lingered off to the side, his camera hanging idle against his chest. He wasn't shooting anymore. I've got a few shots," he said, hesitant as if he'd picked up something that didn't belong solely to him. "I'll send them to you before I file if you'd like." Clara met his eyes and saw a kind of honesty rare in event lights. "Thank you," she said. Deeper inside, Richard Slate lingered one beat too long, his hands still clapping out of habit, though no sound came. His neck felt dry. His thumb worried a cufflink as if clinging to ritual. "A great night," he muttered to the air, the words falling into the thick carpet and vanishing. Daniel Brooks leaned close, cologne heavy as a coat overwrought. "Go home. We'll sort it out tomorrow." But sort out what Daniel didn't say. He knew tonight's phones would be loud. Keep your word. The chant already had rhythm timbre. It would find its way into inboxes and news feeds. The revolving doors turned. A rush of New York night scratched across faces. Clara zipped a thin borrowed coat. Jay asked to walk her to the steps. The night bus is crowded. Let me wait with you. No need, she said with a smile that reached her eyes. You've done enough. He nodded, hands tucked behind his back, the chill of the steel tray still pressed on his middle finger. On the stone steps, Valerie toyed with her empty glass stranded between shores, the things already said, and the things she didn't know how to start. A shadow brushed her red silk gown, the scent of regret, elusive, easily masked by perfume. Clara stepped down, hearing the metronome in her head click. Keep your word, click, keep your word. She crossed the square wind, weaving exhaust with pretzel smoke. Her pocket buzzed an unknown number. She let it ring out. It buzzed again. This time, it was Sister Joan, caretaker of the Bronx church. Are you all right, child? I am, Clara answered, and was surprised to realize it wasn't a lie. The late-night subway was bleak, its plastic seats cold. Doors slid open and shut like the city's lungs. Across from her, a girl hugged a hot pizza box, the smell of tomato sauce, and dough gnawing at hunger. Lena, Clara's daughter, was with Marisol next door. Clara texted, "Is she asleep yet?" The reply, "Yes. She waited for you." A green heart. Across town, Miles opened his laptop, importing the photos. He paused at one. Clara facing Richard, the grand piano glowing between them like an altar, Richard trapped in his own words. The cursor hovered over the send icon. He took a deep breath. Send her the preview first. Click. The file left his machine like a small promise. In a boutique hotel suite near Lincoln Center, Richard stood at the window. City lights stacked in golden squares like a spreadsheet. He set his watch on the table, trying to silence the clicking still in his skull. His phone lit up. PR statement draft in 20. Decide wording, joke, banter, legal, no legal liability, but reputational risk. Daniel, 9 a.m., tomorrow, room 3, Whitman will be there. Richard typed, OK, deleted it. Typed 9, deleted it. Finally sent a single thumbs-up emoji hollow as his applause had been. In a fourth-floor walk-up, Clara unlocked her door so softly the latch seemed warned ahead of time. Lena shifted in sleep, breathing evenly. Clara sat on the bed's edge, hand resting on her daughter's back, feeling the flutter of her heart beneath cotton. On the table lay a toy keyboard with its battery cover missing. Clara turned it over, smiling. People say music demands perfection, but tonight she had relearned that music demands courage first. Her phone buzzed. Miles, I sent you some photos. If you don't want them published, tell me. I'll respect that. Clara opened one. She saw herself standing tall, saw the man trapped in his own declaration, saw the piano watching them both. She didn't see victory. She saw the order of a room quietly correcting something long misplaced. She typed back, "Thank you for asking. I have nothing to hide. You can publish. Just don't make me a saint." Miles replied, "I have a camera, not an incense burner." A smiley face blinked on screen. Clara turned out the light. The city's noise swept past her window like a sleepless river. Somewhere uptown, a small church locked against the cold, its upright piano waiting for dawn. The next morning, as she tied her hair before the mirror, her phone lit up. Her just and keep your word shot to the top of the trending charts. A grainy clip from someone's back row, clear chant, clean notes, and the image of a woman setting down a tray. Clara looked in the mirror, straightened her uniform collar. Go to work, she told herself, her daughter rubbing sleep from her eyes, and the city still chewing over last night. 8:57 a.m. Conference room, 3 at Slate Properties. Floor-to-ceiling, glass Manhattan's fogged skyline as backdrop. Richard, Daniel head of PR, Elaine Cooper, in-house legal counsel, Arthur Mooney, and Mr. Whitman were already seated. This morning, no one smiled out of courtesy. Elaine slid a stack of papers forward draft statements. Option A. Last night's remark was an inappropriate joke. We apologize. Option B. We will invite Ms. Henderson to tour the company, spend a day with the executive team, and fund music scholarships. Whitman cut in his voice calm as a gavel. Last night was not a slip of words. It was a promise. Arthur cleared his throat. Legally, it doesn't constitute. Whitman turned to Arthur. I'm not talking law. I'm talking honor. He pushed a morning paper across to Richard Miles's full-page photo. Clara. Richard, the grand piano. Headline, Keeping Your Word is the New Luxury. Daniel frowned. Who came up with that? Richard sipped cold coffee, the paper cup bending under his hand. He nodded toward Arthur. If I follow the exact wording, I hand over a multi-billion-dollar company to someone with no management experience. They'll call me insane. Whitman. If you do nothing, they'll call you a coward. Between insane and coward, I know which the public despises more. Elaine interjected, voice measured. We can work with the spirit of the promise, giving power in a sustainable way. For example, invite Ms. Henderson as CEO in residence for 90 days. Shadow the CEO, observe, ask questions. Simultaneously establish an arts and work fund to support service workers' access to music education with an independent board co-chaired by Clara. Arthur flipped open his notebook. I can structure the legal framework. Daniel nodded. I can line up the donors. Whitman sat straighter, but ask her first. She demanded nothing last night except respect. Richard set down his cup, lips tight. Call her. 9:35 a.m. Clara finished wiping the third sink in an office restroom, the window framing a patch of milk-colored sky. Lena sat on a folding chair, coloring a cat drawing. The phone buzzed, no name displayed. Clara answered. A polite woman's voice. I'm Ava Morales, Mr. Slate's executive secretary. If convenient, we'd like to invite you. Clara cut her off. I'm at work. 4 o'clock. St. Agnes Church music room if he wants to talk. Silence for 3 seconds. Yes, we'll be there. Clara hung up, told Lena add a toe. Lena giggled, scrawling a clumsy curve. In Clara's mind, Elaine's words unspoken, yet hadn't been invented. Her own words already were, don't make me a symbol, then abandon the ones still carrying trays. 4:02 p.m. St. Agnes, music room, plaster walls, wooden doors, sunlight cutting through dust. An old upright rested in the corner, chipped keys. Sister Joan poured tea. Richard, Elaine, Arthur, Daniel, and Ava arrived almost together. Whitman had been there since 3:45, reading a file. Clara stood with her hand on a chair back, not sitting. I won't drag this out, she said. Last night you spoke a sentence and the entire room heard. I don't think you need to explain it. You need to keep it. Richard glanced around as if someone had dimmed the lights. Elaine smiled smoothly. We have a proposal not to diminish the promise but to fulfill it properly. CEO in residence for 90 days, shadowing making select decisions approved by a council. Plus, the Arts and Work Fund, co-chaired by you to channel resources responsibly. Clara considered. I don't need to sit beside Mr. Slate for 90 days to learn how to sit in a chair, she said, not sharp, not mocking, just plain. I want people like Jay Lee, the waiter last night, to have evening scholarships to study music or business or whatever they choose. I want legal shift coverage so they can attend classes. I want proper break rooms in every venue so workers can sit and eat decently, not crouch behind curtains. Whitman allowed himself a small smile. The gavel had struck true. Arthur scribbled furiously. Daniel glanced at Elaine, feasible. Richard closed his eyes a beat, then opened them, and the CEO matter. The room waited. Clara lifted the keyboard lid, touched a soft middle C. The piano's voice was rough but honest. You want me in a chair to muzzle a moral demand made in public, she asked. I don't need that. Silence. But last night you promised. If not the letter, then the spirit announced that for the next 90 days every decision about people at your company hiring training shifts must go through a council. I co-chair with minutes made public. Call it whatever you want. But let the audience from last night, the ones who chanted, "Keep your word," be able to read it. Elaine looked to Whitman. He nodded this time, firmly like a ruling. Arthur, legally, we can establish an independent People's Council with delegated authority. Records public. Daniel, I'll call the donors. They'll back it. Richard placed his hand on the old piano, feeling a coolness the Grand had never held. All right, he said, voice stripped of polish. I'll keep my word this way. We announced tonight. He turned to Clara. And you, Clara. Tonight I have a shift, but I'll come if Jay Lee gets off an hour early to join me. Sister Joan smiled, pouring tea. Then we have ourselves a harmony. 7:15 p.m. Slate Properties issued the press release. Keeping our word, a 90-day plan. Miles posted the photo with Clara's approval captioned simply, "A public promise is a difficult instrument, but it can be played true." Keep your word shifted into keep our word. In a theater basement kitchen, Jay untied his apron an hour early, sprinting across streets like carrying a note he refused to drop. Clara arrived 3 minutes late, hair still hastily tied, hands faintly scented of cleaning solution. Before the cameras, before microphones, before the eyes that once laughed her small, she said, I don't need anyone to change my life. I need everyone to change how they treat others. Last night, someone reminded a man to keep his word. Tonight, we remind each other keep our word together. Somewhere in a pane of glass, Richard saw his own reflection beside the words, keep our word. For the first time in years, he heard his watch ticking without power. He heard something closer to rhythm. New York, night drew the curtains again. In the Bronx, the upright still rattled on a few notes. But when Clara laid her hands down, it too joined in as people do if given enough patience and respect. Somewhere in the city, a child tapped CD on a toy keyboard, missing its battery cover. Somewhere else, a wealthy man practiced saying a hard sentence, slowly, I will keep my word, and practiced doing it. 3 days later, the People Council was announced a council of workers, co-chaired by Clara Henderson and Elaine Cooper, with meeting minutes published on the company website, and each session live-streamed start to finish. No decision on hiring shifts or benefits could be signed without a council vote. Arthur Mooney drafted a short charter, at least 10 minutes of speaking time guaranteed for each frontline worker group. The right for employees to propose policies directly. A symbolic veto from the public citizens could submit feedback, and the council was required to respond to at least 3 proposals every month. The first session took place in a small conference room at Slate Properties' glass walls, overlooking the river, though no one looked outside that day. Jay Lee arrived, shirt still wrinkled, clutching a sheet scribbled over and erased. Beside him sat 2 janitors, a night shift guard, and Marta the kitchen worker, her hands still smelling faintly of onions. On the opposite side, operations representatives, shift managers, finance officers, and Daniel Brooks. At the far end, Mr. Whitman tapped a wooden pen lightly against his notebook. Elaine opened. Today, we begin with small concrete steps. Clara didn't read from notes. I want to start where people get tired, most the gap between shifts. We need a backfill fund. Each site must budget 10% extra hours, so workers can attend night classes, go to appointments, or simply breathe. At the gala, Jay worked overtime. Tonight, he shouldn't have to be here. The operations manager frowned. 10% overtime is money. Extra staff is money. Clara, I know. But that night you saw a crowd that knew how to count. They counted a promise, not coins. Jay raised his hand voice, cracking. One thing. With sudden schedule changes, we eat scraps standing backstage. Could we have a proper break room? A table, a microwave that isn't filthy a chair to lean back 20 minutes? Marta nodded. And a fridge where nobody dumps out someone else's food. The finance officer folded his hands. Break rooms at every site, renovations, hygiene standards. Where's the budget? Elaine flipped a slide. Attached is option B. Cut 15% from the floral and premium wine budget for VIP clients for 90 days, redirect it into staff lounge standards. Any donor who wants to send flowers, let them send them to the break room. Daniel glanced at Whitman, caught the faintest smirk. Clara continued night shift scholarship policy. Each quarter, the company covers 50 hours of study for frontline employees' music accounting. English, anything they choose. Condition 75%. Attendance final assignment submitted to the People Council. We read it, we praise it, we correct it. A manager chuckled dryly. Sounds like charity classes. Whitman raised his head pen, striking louder. Sounds like responsibility. Clara fixed her gaze on the man. At the gala, many wanted me to be the joke. I don't remember their faces, and I don't need to. But if today we laugh at someone else trying to learn, I will remember the face. The room fell silent. Not from fear, but because her words left space for dignity. Arthur laid out details, an anonymous hotline for break violations independent of the company, a code of conduct signed by managers and staff alike banning class-based jokes, legal shift change standards, PPE requirements for cleaners, a pilot of flexible scheduling for single parents. Elaine closed. Minutes will go public tonight. Who votes? Hands rose, scattered at first, then more. Daniel hesitated, then raised his. Richard Slate, who had been standing in the doorway unnoticed, stepped fully inside, raising his hand last. Keep your word, he said loud enough for all. At noon, Valerie Easton sent Clara a private message. That night, I behaved badly. I'm sorry. If the Arts and Work Fund needs volunteers, I'll help. Clara read it, left it. That evening, she replied, Come to a People Council meeting. Just sit and listen. No need to speak. Valerie typed, Thank you, deleted it, rewrote, I'll be there. The press didn't stay quiet. A talk show sneered, CEO in Residence People Council. What is this class president elections? Miles Brown wrote a short piece, a hard instrument to play neither praise nor attack, just recounting the click of a watch and the ting of a silver tray. It spread quickly because it didn't tell readers what to think. It let them listen again. That night, Clara worked her shift as usual. She polished mirrors, scrubbed sinks, changed trash bags, mopped floors. In a hallway corner, Jay ran past, flashing a thumbs up. Marta left a homemade lunchbox on the staff table, sealed tight with a note on top. Leave it. Clara sat down, opened her phone, saw a photo from Lena, a cat colored in tail, curled like a hook. She thought about the hooks that had pulled a long night into rhythm. Late heading out, she found Richard alone, staring at the Keep Our Word poster on a glass wall. Tomorrow they'll call me the Madman, he said, eyes still fixed on the poster. But for the first time, I think mad might be better than coward. Clara didn't pause long. Tomorrow, I don't know what they'll call you, but tonight, someone has already been called human. He turned as if seeing a rope tying him to something more reliable than a title. Messages. Valerie, I'll come and listen, no speaking. Daniel J. has enrolled in night classes for shift management at community college. Night shift scholarship approved. Sister Joan. The church is holding a community concert Saturday. Do you want to play? Clara replied, I do, and added, Save me one empty chair near the piano. Sister. What for Clara? For whoever's tired to sit. Sometimes an empty chair is the best policy of all. That weekend, the community concert at St. Agnes was packed. Not with scandal watchers, but with people who were rarely invited anywhere. The music room smelled of wood incense and rain-soaked coats. On the low stage, the old upright piano rested like a tamed animal. Sister Joan pinned a handwritten sign on the board, "If you're tired, sit." Beneath it stood the wooden chair Clara had requested. Jay carried a notebook. Marta brought a child on her hip. Valerie Easton wore a wool cap, no makeup, sitting mid-row, keeping her promise, just listening. Miles left his camera at his side. Tonight he wasn't here to shoot. Clara sat at the piano. No gown, no spotlight, only clean hands and an untitled score. She began with a husky C, the husk of old wood of strings bent once by cold, then flowed into a melody neither sad nor joyful. It was like a wet city, street lamps fractured into shards, faces passing through broken yet recognizable. Richard slipped in late, leaning against the doorframe. He didn't understand all of the music, but he understood the look in the listeners' eyes. They weren't customers' eyes. They were the eyes of people sharing one city, one breath. Whitman nodded to him, not inviting closer, not sending away. Midway, an old man coughed. Clara stopped, smiled, gestured toward the empty chair. He sat, breathing easier. Then she began the phrase again as if nothing had happened. A small policy enacted through a gesture. When the piece ended, no one clapped immediately. Some silences are worth keeping. Then applause came quiet, but steady enough to sting hands. Valerie didn't send flowers, didn't speak. She stood in line with the others waiting for Clara. When her turn came, she said only, "That night I was wrong." Clara answered, "Tonight you were right." Valerie nodded, eyes hot. "I'll come to the next People Council." "To listen," Clara reminded. "To listen," Valerie repeated, as if memorizing a new note. Outside, drizzle fell. Miles walked beside Richard along a brick wall. "You think you'll survive 90 days of this?" Richard shrugged the kind of shrug of a man learning honesty. "I've survived worse." Then added low enough for Miles alone, "I once couldn't survive myself." Daniel called bad news. A major shareholder demands an emergency meeting. They say the People Council is weakening the company. They want the charter postponed. Richard stopped. Raindrops clung heavy to his hair. "Tell them 9 a.m., main hall." He hung up. Miles didn't take a picture. He tucked the words away like a lucky stone. The next morning, the main hall was full. Shareholders in gray sat in rows, faces stamped from the same mold. Their leaders spoke quickly. "We've read the charter. Public minutes. Guaranteed floor time for frontline staff. Good PR, but companies don't run on ideals." Clara sat at the head, a paper name card before her. She didn't answer right away. Whitman let her set the tempo. Finally, she said, "At the gala, a room full of power ran on mockery. It ran well enough until a single note stopped it. Today, if you call the People Council an ideal, I won't argue. But I know mockery is irrational, and a system that rewards the irrational isn't worthy of being called healthy." A shareholder sneered, "You're teaching us economics." "Clara, I'm telling you about the reality of working hours and living hours. If a company leaves no room for living hours, it will cannibalize itself just to keep running." Elaine pushed forward a slide, turnover rates, recruitment costs, training dollars vanishing out the window. Arthur added another litigation risks over illegal shifts, fines looming. Numbers don't feel shame, they only count. Richard stood tall. "We've made decisions by numbers and ignored people. Now we'll make decisions for people and check the numbers after." Daniel followed, and for reputation. You've read the headline, "Keeping your word is the new luxury." If we kill the People Council now, we don't just drop a board. We kill the slogan that's saving us. Silence. Whitman tapped his pen once, twice, 3 times. "Vote," he said. Hands rose. Not all, but enough, eh? The gray block retreated, their mouths thinner than before. After the meeting, Richard called Miles. "If you're free, I want you at every People Council session. Shoot or don't, your choice. But I want a good listener there." Miles. "I don't sell ears, only photos." Richard smiled. "Then sell photos. But listen for me anyway." That afternoon, Valerie appeared at the second session woolcap on silent. When Jay spoke about shift changes, she took notes, a habit she thought belonged only to art auctions. Marta proposed refrigerators with name labels. Sister Joan sent a handwritten letter requesting 3 upright pianos donated to 2 churches and a high school. The minutes recorded approved. That night, Clara came home, laid her hand on Lena's back as always. The girl dreamed, whispering do-re-mi under her breath. In Clara's mind, the city moved lightly now, like a score, no longer bullying its listeners but nodding along with them. Her phone buzzed. Whitman had sent a film photo, an empty chair at St. Agnes, the sign taped to it. "If you're tired, sit." Clara texted back, "Thank you for being silent when I spoke." Whitman, "Thank you for speaking right when I was silent." Outside, rain misted down. "Keep our word" was no longer just a poster on glass. It was a line of handwriting people were adding to their own habits, shift by shift, note by note. And in the rain, if you listened carefully, you could still hear the click of a watch this time, beating in rhythm with the breathing of a room that had learned to listen. Week 2 of the People Council brought its first test not on paper, but at a Slate Properties construction site. By day, donors toured the site. By night, a surprise safety inspection arrived. The night shift was overloaded. Site manager Hugh Nolan ordered breaks cut to keep the schedule pretty for the clients. Messages zigzagged through workers' phones. No breaks. If you're tired, deal with it. One photo leaked onto the company network. A worker collapsed beside a saw safety vest, crumpled like a wilted leaf. Jay Lee was on duty at another venue across town. When he saw the post, he requested an emergency shift transfer, reason typed bluntly, "People Council on site." He arrived at 11:27 p.m., the air heavy with concrete dust iron filings and cheap black coffee. "Where's the break?" Jay asked. Hugh laughed hoarsely. "Break time is work time, kid." Jay pulled up the minutes from the council's first session, highlighting the clauses, 10% backfill hours, mandatory staff lounges. This was signed. "You're in violation." Hugh sneered. "I sign what I want." Jay handed his phone to a worker voice, steady but loud. "Stream this to the internal network." The camera shook. Jay faced it directly. "Under the charter, I call for a 20-minute stop. Anyone tired, sit." Across the city, Clara was cleaning a conference room when a push notification lit her phone. "Live Site 12. Request to stop machines." She tapped. The screen opened on the yellow haze of floodlights. Jay stood upright like an unsharpened pencil. Behind him, Hugh lunged for the phone. The picture jolted, then steadied. A growl broke in. "Turn it off." Clara dialed Elaine Cooper. "Bring the council online now." Elaine's fingers flew dialing like staccato keys. Arthur patched in legal authority. Daniel used the intranet to push a banner, "Emergency session." Public broadcast. Whitman lifted his phone, called, "Richard, go to the site." "Richard, I'm at home." Whitman, "Then go to the site." His voice calm as a hammer strike. 17 minutes later, a camera lit up inside a makeshift meeting room, plywood stacked as tables. The People Council appeared on screen, Clara Elaine, Arthur Daniel Whitman. Jay was breathless but unyielding. Hugh crossed his arms, chin raised. I'm responsible for progress, he said. These so-called lounges cost money. Clara stared into the lens then at the workers behind Hugh Red-Eye's sweat-soaked shoulders. At the gala, people thought music was a joke. They were wrong. Tonight, you think rules are a joke. You're wrong. She paused, letting the words land. People council votes, machines stop for 20 minutes. Open a rest space in container A with water with chairs. Anyone tired sits, and backfill 10% starting now. Hugh scoffed. You're not here. Arthur slid forward a document stamped in red. In emergencies, the council's co-chairs have authority to halt operations for up to 30 minutes for worker safety and dignity. Hugh started to retort, but headlights flared at the gate. Richard Slate stepped out, no tie coat, half-buttoned. He looked at Hugh, then at the hunched worker, then at the camera. Stop, Richard said. Open container A. The air shifted. Machines shut down. Fans went silent. The container door shrieked open. Inside, folding chairs bottled water bread just bought. A salt-and-pepper-haired man staggered in, dropped onto a chair, hands trembling like over-tight strings, finally loosened. Jay draped his jacket over the man's shoulders, then slumped to the floor, back against the wall, smiling through his exhaustion. Hugh stood still, eyes lowered a degree. Richard turned to the camera. Public record. I, the man who once thought my words were only games, demand this be written 20-minute stop for safety. Rest space opened. 10% backfill enforced. Hugh Nolan to face internal investigation for violating council charter. And if necessary, I'll apologize publicly to these workers. He swallowed like choking down an old habit. Clara didn't clap. She said, apologies are for doing, not saying. Richard nodded his first nod as a student, not a boss. Whitman tapped his pen once the emergency session ended, but the lesson had just begun. The next morning, headlines split. Slate halts site panders to sentimental council in 20-minute break, saves a worker's back. Miles Brown didn't write an article. He posted a single still from the live stream, a folding chair in a container. Condensation on a water bottle, a worker's hand shielding half his face. Caption: an empty chair is a policy that breathes. At St. Agnes, Sister Joan pinned a new note beneath, if you're tired, sit. It read, if you, sit rise at the right time. Clara smiled the smile of someone who had set two notes straight in a tangled phrase. That afternoon, Hugh knocked on the council's door. He was weary, voice rough. I request the chance to explain myself. Clara nodded. Sit down. He hesitated, then sat. Some lessons you only learn by sitting. A live interview, something Clara had avoided but could no longer. The station's invitation, town hall, keep our word. On set, the lights weren't as cold as the galas, but not warm either. The host wanted to dig, and the audience wanted something real. It opened with the gala clip, Richard's challenge. Clara setting down the tray, the first note, the applause, the chant, keep your word. Then the construction site footage container. A folding chairs, water bottles, beaded with condensation, the 20-minute break. The host turned to Richard. Do you see yourself as still performing? That night you performed power. Now you perform remorse. Richard looked straight into the lens. If I'm performing, he said, then the director is the public, and the script is the words I spoke that night. I once thought power was being able to speak. Turns out power is keeping what you've said. The answer was plain, neither evasive nor theatrical. The host turned to Clara. Do you fear being turned into a symbol, then abandoned? Clara tilted her head, smiling thinly. I once told a photographer not to make me a saint. I don't want to be worshipped. I want empty chairs in break rooms everywhere. At the gala, I asked for respect. Now, I ask for habit. The audience gave a rare murmur, not shock, but recognition. Valerie Easton, third row, wool cap, bare face, asked to speak. That night I said something I can't repeat without shame. I came here to listen, and to say to people like me, the ones who know how to laugh politely at the wrong time, don't laugh anymore. The host glanced at Miles Brown, the last guest. New photos. Miles shook his head. Not tonight. Tonight I'm here to listen. He told of the watch's click, the trays ting the empty chair in the container, and a message. Don't make me a saint. A good photographer, Miles said, knows when to put the camera down. The stream was calm until a live caller asked, sources say the People Council is just PR, base wages haven't gone up. The question was sharp as a blade. Elaine took the numbers. Wage increases require collective bargaining and board approval with timelines set. Talks with worker representatives begin next week. Clara added a small sentence that carried far. I came to ask for living hours for working people. Wages are the voice of those hours. People can't live on slogans. So I hope the audience keeps us under the light. The host blinked. He hadn't expected such a soft line to cut. The applause wasn't loud but thick. Online, Asher, keep our word, shifted into Shuck, keep counting. Keep the promise and count. Count backfill hours, count. Break rooms, opened, count. Night shift scholarships granted, count the tired who got to sit. When the program ended, Richard stepped out into the hall breeze. He asked, Clara, could I come to St. Agnes on Saturday night? Clara shrugged. The church is open, but if you come to be seen, you'll see nothing. If you come to see, you will. He understood half. The other half he would learn. Saturday night, St. Agnes glowed again with a light that blinded no one. Jay carried his shift management notebooks. Marta brought butter cookies. Valerie silenced her phone and shoved it deep into her bag, a ritual against old habits of display. Whitman came early, placing the empty chair beside the piano. Miles carried an unspooled roll of film, set it on the sill as if taking attendance. Clara began with a melody of very few notes. The spaces between them were wider than before, as if leaving room for the listener's breathing. On the second round, she nodded to a boy of 10, standing behind Jay, eyes black as a deep well. He stepped up, hands on a toy keyboard Jay had set next to the real one, the same toy missing its battery cover that Lena used. He played Do-Re-Mi, clumsy but clear. Clara followed him, the real piano stitching itself to the toy keys, each stitch slow-aligned. The whole room chuckled softly. Not at him, but with him. Outside, rain came hard. Richard stood on the steps, listened through the door but didn't enter. He just stood, hands in pockets, staring at the sign. If you're tired, sit, and at the chair. An old woman passed with a cane. He held the door. She nodded, marking him present as a man. He suddenly remembered the watch he'd taken off the gala night. In his mind, the click no longer beat like command, but like rhythm. At home, Clara unlocked the door softly as always. Lena slept arms around the toy keyboard. Clara sat by the bed listening to her daughter's breathing, one breath older, one city older, one promise a little newer. Her phone buzzed, Miles's message, no photo attached. Tonight I didn't shoot. I listened. Clara set the phone face down. In the dark, she felt a note fall inside her round clean, and knew that tomorrow would begin with small things, an hour of backfill, a cleaned staff lounge, an empty chair placed right a child learning Do-Re-Mi on an imperfect piano. And among all that, some adults practicing a hard sentence, I will keep my word. Monday morning, the bargaining table was set on the 18th floor. On the left sat the frontline workers, J. Lee Marta, the kitchen-aide Ramon, the night guard Dolores from janitorial, along with Clara Henderson as co-chair of the People Council. On the right sat management Nadia Green, CFO new since last year, Daniel Brooks operations, Elaine Cooper, PR, Arthur Mooney, legal. At the end, as always, Mr. Whitman, silent wooden pen laid across his notebook like a ruler. The wall screen displayed the keep counting dashboard. Staff lounges up to standard 712 sites. Backfill hours issued 412 in 10 days. Night shift scholarships approved 23J the 1st for shift management. Safety incidents since the 20-minute shutdown. Monthly attrition down 12%. Nadia tapped her pen on her chin. These numbers are good, but base wages are a fixed budget. We've already opened backfill funds, scholarships, lounges. If wages rise 8 to 10%, what do we cut? Her tone was even not condescending. Clara didn't look at the screen but at the people. At the gala, many things were displayed for appearances. Today I want to display living hours. If someone has to work 2 jobs just to cover rent, every benefit is just paper. Jay opened his notebook. Proposal 1, raise base pay, 1.75 hour, for all frontline roles effective in 30 days. Proposal 2, night shift premium, 0.75 hour after 10 p.m. Proposal 3, child care stipend, $120 a month for single parents with flexible scheduling priority. Ramon rubbed his wrist. We're not asking for luxury. We're asking not to be exhausted by a second job. Nadia pulled up 2 columns projected cost versus offsets. If we do 3 things, we can cover 70% of the raise. Renegotiate 2 outsourced cleaning contracts, bring them in-house, save 6%. Permanently cut 25% of flowers, wine, VIP decor. Elaine glanced at Clara, gave a small nod. Freeze executive bonuses this quarter transfer to the Human Hours Fund. Richard already agreed to forfeit his. All eyes turned to the end of the table. Richard wasn't present, but the shadow of Keep Your Word was. Daniel added, I got 2 donors to redirect event funds into the Arts and Work Endowment. Whitman rolled his pen. I'll match that. Nadia typed quickly. That leaves a 30% gap. From the observer row, a lone voice, Marianne Cole, a rarely seen board member. I oppose publicizing negotiation minutes. It weakens the company with third parties. Elaine, transparency is the promise. If we hide now, we break the story. Marianne tightened her bag strap. We're a business, not a charity. Clara folded her hands. That night, the hall told Richard to keep his word. The next morning, we built the People Council to keep our word together. If we pull the curtain now, we go back to polite laughter over other people's heads. Her words weren't loud, but pressed the air down. Whitman lifted his head. Vote on transparency. Hands rose. Daniel Nadia after a beat. Elaine Whitman. Arthur, I abstain, but confirm it's legal. The observers stayed quiet. Decision public. Back to wages. Nadia lowered her voice. With 30% uncovered, I need a bridge. Marta slid forward in her chair. I have a proposal. She laid down a grease-stained sheet. We lose money to wasted food, filthy break rooms forcing people to toss meals, chaotic shifts causing late coverage. Let's form a work habits team, 3 workers, 2 managers to fix waste. I'll join. Nadia blinked, like seeing a number step off the spreadsheet. If we cut waste 2-3%, I can carry the last 30%. Arthur, and design a pilot childcare stipend with clear criteria. Not everyone needs $120. Some need hourly vouchers. Daniel, I'll connect with the community center. Elaine, I'll draft posters. Keep our word and keep our habits. No polish, no halos. Clara looked around the table. Vote on a phased wage plan. 1. $1,000 hour in 30 days. 2. Soak on to 75 hour in 90 days. If Keep Counting hits 100% lounges, certified 600 backfill hours, month attrition down 15%. 3. Night premium. About 75 per hour effective immediately. Child care pilot for 60 employees this quarter. Hands rose together. Marianne's did not. Decision passed. At that moment, Arthur's phone buzzed a leaked email subject line: Bypass People Council. Internal guide. Anonymous sender screenshot attached Hugh Nolan's playbook for site managers. If the council calls a stop move, cruise into storage, keep machines running low. The room chilled. Daniel slammed the table lightly. Hugh just finished his testimony. Arthur procedure: suspend open investigation. Public minutes. Clara looked down at the wood grain, then up to Knight. Hugh sits through the open session. No defense, just listening. Whitman tapped his pen once, cutting the measure. Session ended. On the screen, green letters lit up under Keep Counting Wage Package, passed public. Jay watched the line appear like a chord resolving in time. He turned to Clara, mouthed, "Thank you." Clara shook her head. Thank the living hours. That afternoon, a short release: Keep Our Word. Phased wage increases via Keep Counting. Night Premium, Childcare Pilot. Online comments exploded. Some sneered, some cheered, many waited for paychecks. Miles Brown didn't write a long piece. He posted a photo of the meeting board, crude LED letters: Keep Our Word, New Wages, Phased. Caption counting is the only way truth speaks. That night, Clara pushed open the door. Lena was coloring a second cattail long curled into a question mark. "Mom, does keeping your word it mean keeping yourself?" she asked. Clara paused, then nodded. "Yes. Keeping your word is keeping yourself with what's right." Lena tilted her head. "So, if I promise not to eat candy before dinner, am I keeping myself?" Clara laughed. "Yes. And my promise is to eat dinner with you." They sat down together, cheap noodles, a small slice of cake enough and true. Later, an email dropped into Clara's inbox. From Hugh Nolan. Subject: I want to listen. No excuses, no, but no because, just that. Clara replied, tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Container A, the empty chair is still there. Across town, Richard opened a window. Rain tapped the sill like a natural metronome. He flicked on the TV as Keep Our Word, just PR, scrolled the Chiron. He switched it off. Sitting in silence, he heard the click in his head line up with the rain for once not unpleasant. At St. Agnes, Sister Joan wrote beneath the board, "If you're tired, sit. If you're strong, remind someone else to sit." The words were simple, like a long-held note stretched just enough to let others join. Day 30. The Public Town Hall. Keep Counting Review. Lincoln Center opened its doors early. No grand backdrop, just one large screen showing 3 numbers. Staff lounges certified 1212. Backfill hours, month 683. Attrition, 17%. The hall was full but orderly. Elaine stepped to the mic. "This is not a ceremony. This is a roll call." She invited Marta to tell the story of a fridge with names. Ramon of falling asleep less often. Jay of his Wednesday night class. Dolores a janitor of sitting when tired and standing at the right time. Richard Slate walked up a folded sheet in his hand, not to read from, but to keep his hands from shaking. That night I made a crazy promise. The next morning I had 2 choices, crazy or coward. I chose crazy, but it turned out I chose people. A short ripple of applause, not loud. I forfeit my bonus this year. I ask the board to match it into the Human Hours Fund, and I ask those listening to keep a promise to themselves: if you run a place, open one, empty chair. From mid-row, Marianne Cole hesitated, then raised her hand. I'll match 50%. A wave of murmurs spread. Whitman barked 100%. Daniel burst into laughter he couldn't hold, then straightened. Clara stepped to the mic, no paper in hand. At the gala, a room learned one note, the note of silence. When people stopped laughing, they listened. For 30 days, we've changed one habit before speaking we count. Count backfill hours, count lounges, opened count scholarships, count apologies that came with actions. She pointed to the screen. The next number I want is payroll deposits, and another chart how many people sat when they needed to. The hall chuckled softly, a warm sound. An MC opened the floor. A man stood, Hugh Nolan. The air cooled. He spoke slowly, just loud enough I wrote the email to skirt the rules. I thought the charter was a shell. I was wrong. I asked to listen. No applause. The right silence fell. Clara nodded. Then, tonight 7 p.m., container A. You sit. Miles Brown didn't hold a camera. He held a notebook. He wrote, one big classroom, lesson, sit, listen, count, act. Beside him, Valerie whispered, tomorrow. I won't make jokes anymore. Miles smiled. Tomorrow I might not shoot anymore. Valerie blinked. To listen, he said. As the program neared its end, the power flickered heavy rain, tangled wind. The screen went dark for a second. Numbers gone. The hall froze. Then one phone flashlight lit then another until the room was full of small stars. Elaine handed the mic to Clara. No screen. What do you want to say? Clara looked to the front row where Sister Joan had set a cardboard sign. If you're tired, sit, Clara said. Without the screen, we count out loud. Tonight, how many here will sit when tired, hands up? Hands rose. How many will remind others to sit? More hands. How many will keep their word until we meet again? Still raised the heartbeat of the room, knocking together like a living metronome. The power returned. The screen flashed the final figure, January payroll 100% transferred. No one cheered. People exhaled long. The numbers entered accounts that was money music, not beloved, but necessary for other songs to be played. Afterward, Richard stood in the hall giving the press a short line. No plan is perfect. But one empty chair is a good enough start. A reporter asked, aren't you afraid people will think you're posturing? Richard answered afraid. But I'm more afraid of not acting. Clara left with Lena's hand in hers, passing the steps where 30 days earlier she had set down her tray. Lena asked Mom, where do we go now? Clara home. And tomorrow to school. I go to work. Everyone keeps their own word. Night dropped fog over rooftops. In container A folding chair waited for a man named Hugh. At St. Agnes, the upright piano waited for a piece of few notes. In a community classroom, Jay opened his book, Shift Management Begins with Living Hours. Miles went home, put down his camera, opened his notebook. Valerie set her alarm, People Council. Sit and listen. Whitman slipped the wooden pen into his coat pocket, walking slow, back straight. And somewhere in the thinning rain, the click of a watch blended into the breathing of a city that had just learned another note. Day 45. New York was covered in wet, clinging snow. Winter storm warnings, slanting winds, power flickering in waves. That night, a fundraising gala at a small partner theater of Slate Properties pushed ahead because the donors are already here. Inside, frontline staff scrambled the kitchen lost power. The heaters surged on and off. 2 crates of frozen flowers blocked the emergency exit. Shift manager Marla Dent spun between 2 calls, donors insisting on keeping the experienced tech reporting backup. Power would last only 40 minutes. Jay Lee got a ping from the internal channel. Stages burning. Town hall moving here, need council presence. He grabbed his heavy coat, stuffed his notebook in, and bolted. Snow slapped his face. He felt his breath puff like a flute blowing unevenly. Marta, prepping hot food at St. Agnes, heard the news too. She phoned, Clara need soup pots. Bring 2 thermos jugs, Clara said. And wear your hat. When Jay arrived, the lobby felt like a standing ice tank. Guests in fur coats huddled lips, chattering. A wealthy woman stomped her heel. What is this? I've donated hundreds of thousands. Valerie Easton, in her familiar wool cap, slipped past, handing the woman a thin blanket. Wrap this. My child once needed a blanket just like that waiting for the bus. The woman said nothing, fingers clutching the fabric by reflex. Jay didn't head for the powerful. He looked for the blocked exit, 2 crates of frozen flowers tied with ornate ribbons. He called out, "Exits blocked." Marla snapped, "Don't shout. You'll panic them." Jay turned on his phone camera, filming his hands as he untied the ribbon. Voice calm under the council charter exits must be clear. "I'm opening it." He posted to Keep Counting tagged People Council, emergency session. At St. Agnes, Clara was drying piano keys after practice when the push alert lit up partner stage, winter incident, live. She looked at Sister Joan. "I'm going." Sister handed her a thermos. Warm water is an empty chair, too. Clara zipped her coat, carried a cardboard sign, "If you're tired, sit." At the theater, she didn't go backstage. She set the sign at the lobby corner, pulled 3 folding chairs, helped by security from storage, draped thin blankets over them. She poured soup into paper cups, laid out plastic spoons. A pregnant contract worker, eyes red, gripped the chair arm before sitting. Clara handed her a cup. "Stand when you're warm again." The woman nodded, eyes on her belly like watching a note inside. In the control booth, backup lights sputtered. Tech, 14 minutes left. Elaine linked a video bridge. On screen, Clara, Daniel, Arthur Whitman. Richard Slate stood at the edge of the frame coat, dusted in snow. Marla reported like a battle briefing, donors are seated. If we stop, they'll revolt. If we continue, we could fail. I choose to continue. Clara didn't raise her voice. She asked, "Where's the oxygen tank, the flashlights, the exit path, the chairs for the tired?" Each question landed like a beat. Marla froze at the last. Jay swung his camera. "Here, 3 chairs." He panned to the corner with blanket soup. A man muttered, "Some gala looks like a relief station." Miles, in his wool cap, stood behind not shooting, murmured, "Sometimes relief is the gala." A short beep, then the gas alarm wailed. The hall froze for half a second, long enough for old habits to creep in. Then someone shouted, "Run." Whitman tapped his pen on the table edge, evacuation protocol. Daniel bellowed, "Left door, 2." Jay raised his arm, guiding the flow. Valerie untied the last ribbon, hauled a flower crate aside her skirt, streaked with black snow. Clara scooped up a boy about to cry, steady voice, "Watch me inhale, exhale." She counted 1, 2, 3, 4 like conducting a scattered orchestra. Outside, wind whipped. People poured out shoulder to shoulder like tide slurs. Marla stood, rooted eyes wild. Richard leaned close. "Go." He didn't drag her. He walked beside her, matching pace. By the time they reached the curb, the backup power cut out completely. No floored apologies. People Council logged 1 line on Keep Counting. Gala paused 45 minutes. Evacuated 100%. No injuries. Warm station open in Lobby A. Clara returned to the door, counting her frontline team. Jay here, Marta here, pregnant worker here, a young temp named Quinn missing. "Where's Quinn?" Jay shouted. From the far corner. "Here." The girl clutched a power strip, face flushed. She sank into a folding chair, breathing in Clara's count. The empty chair made itself full at the right time. When fire crews confirmed no gas leak, the grid power limped back. Donors checked watches, uneasy. Elaine took the mic. "We can cancel tonight, but there's another program. 20 minutes of thanks to the front line. Those who stay, please sit. Those who leave, sleep well." Unexpectedly, many stayed. On the low stage, no spotlight. Clara sat at the old upright, no electricity needed. She played a melody of very few notes. Silence as wide as the breathing space, just one. Valerie watched her hands, remembering the first gala night, feeling usefully ashamed. Miles lifted his camera once, not to hunt a moment, but to preserve 3 folding chairs with thin blankets, steaming cups of soup, a child sitting quietly listening. The caption wrote itself in his head, "Rescue Gala." Later, he'd change it to, "When a folding chair outshines a bouquet." At the end, Clara pulled the sign, "If you're tired, sit against the wall, brushing snow dry." Marla approached, voice raw. I chose to continue out of fear of losing face. I was wrong. Clara nodded, "Tomorrow sit and listen." Marla nodded back, her first steady moment that night. In the car home, Richard lowered the window. No watch on his wrist, just the wind ticking like a natural metronome. He remembered Clara's words. An empty chair is a policy that breathes, and he thought maybe breathing is the skill Power most often forgets to learn. Day 60. An independent audit team came to scrutinize Hacker Keep counting. Not just the money, they checked real backfill hours, council minutes, whether staff lounges truly had chairs, and microwaves or just posters. Nadia Green worried like a numbers person. Elaine worried like a storyteller afraid of distortion. Clara didn't worry, she was busy doing. At dawn, the auditors went first to Container A. Hugh Nolan was already there. His coat was half unbuttoned, like a white flag stuck halfway. "I came to listen," he said before anyone asked. Marta carried a thermos of coffee. "If you're tired, drink." Hugh nodded, cupping the cup like holding a warm note. The auditors asked who manages the emergency exits. Hugh, "I did. And I once tied them shut with ribbons to look nice. And now I cut the ribbons first." He exhaled as if pushing a habit out of his lungs. "I request demotion. I want to stay to repair." Jay stood beside him smiling without showing teeth. "Then you're on safety team, I'll be your lead." Hugh opened his mouth for an instinctive protest, then closed it. "Okay," he said, "you lead me." At headquarters, the auditors inspected lounges. There were chairs, clean microwaves, fridges labeled with names. A penciled note taped up, "Don't throw away others' food." The auditors photographed it, not as a gotcha, but to file under best practice. They checked backfill logs 6-83, 712 hours since the storm. Night shift scholarships. Jay clocked in for class, Marta enrolled in Food Safety, Dolores in ESL. Attendance logs absentees were asked for reasons not docked living hours. At noon, the People Council held an open session at St. Agnes Clara's idea, "Bring it back where it began." Sister Joan set out tea, wooden chairs in a circle, the sign, "If you're tired, sit leaned against the wall like a queue line." Valerie sat in backhands, folded tight. Marla sat beside Hugh, both silent. Elaine reported 3 90-day goals, "We've hit 2 lounges and backfill." The third attrition down 15% is at 17%. Nadia added, "Phase 1 wages have been paid. Night premium applied. Childcare stipend pilot, 60, eligible 48 used because of daycare licensing gaps." Clara asked what's needed. "Lists of accredited centers near sites, help with registration fees." "Do it," Clara said, "no theatrics." The auditors requested to speak. We found one gap. At 2 sites, flexible schedules for parents were blocked by middle managers citing short staffing, even though backfill was available. The room softened, not defensive, not ashamed. Jay asked names. "We report systems, not individuals," the auditors said. Daniel rose. "We'll name names after hearings." Schedules fixed in 48 hours. Hugh asked for the mic. "I need to confess something wrong." "I did," he began, voice rough. "Last month I altered a rookie's hours to meet quota. I thought I was helping him. Really, I was helping myself. I apologize here." A timid hand went up. "Quinn, the young woman with the power cords that storm night." "That was me?" Hugh nodded. "It was you." Quinn looked down at her shoes. I need my real hours to qualify for the night scholarship. If you fix them, I don't get it. Hugh's hands clenched a paper cup. I was wrong. Clara didn't condemn. She counted 1 you admit, 2 you repair, 3 you teach others not to alter again. She looked up at Miles. Camera idle, write this with your ears. Miles pressed his hand to his notebook. Cover nodded. Next, Valerie asked for a minute. She stood, pulled off her cap, hair messy. At the gala, I laughed. I've come to these sessions to listen. Yesterday, I delivered folding chairs to 3 sites and I signed up to volunteer 1 hour a week in the lounges. I don't ask for applause. No one clapped, and they nodded, and that was what she needed. Marla stared at the upright's wood surface, spoke low. I feared losing face, so I kept pushing events. I'm ready to retrain, and I want to reteach those I taught wrong. Clara rested her hand on the piano lid, felt its coolness. Sit, then stand at the right time. That's enough. The auditor's preliminary finding, Jacques keep counting, isn't tallying for display, but tallying to correct. Recommendation: codify People Council in company bylaws as a standing committee with budget schedule and authority to halt up to 30 minutes for safety and dignity. Arthur scribbled notes, eyes lit like a man who'd found the right clause to draft. That afternoon, Marianne Cole and the Gray shareholders arrived. This time, they didn't bow to numbers. They asked if the council is in the bylaws who ensures it won't abuse power. Richard answered, We tie it to public metrics, Jacques keep counting, and every halt requires a 24-hour report. Everything visible. Whitman chuckled. If you fear the light, you shouldn't sit here. That night, Miles published a photo essay not of storm nights or piano nights, but of chairs folding chairs in Container A, wooden chairs at St. Agnes, plastic chairs in staff lounges, a subway bench where Jay studied notes, a low stool where Marta tied her hair. Title: The Chairs That Save. Last caption: Keeping your word is standing tall. Counting is sitting down at the right time. At home, Clara saw Lena's math test, 10-10. You count well, Clara said. Lena grinned. I kept my promise not to eat candy before dinner. They looked at each other like finishing a quiet duet. Before bed, Clara texted Richard one line, write People Council into the bylaws. He replied with one word, written, no emoji. At St. Agnes, the upright waited for morning. At Container A, folded chairs leaned against the wall like soldiers at ease after letting someone sit. Over the city, snow thinned, the breathing was steadier by one beat. In a small room, the clock's click synced with the heartbeat of a story rounding out. Day 90 arrived as softly as late snow melting on your shoulder before you could remember it was cold. In the morning, the board of directors met to vote on writing the People Council into the bylaws. No grand backdrop in the main conference room, just a simple wooden sign at center: Keep Our Word, 90 days. Arthur Mooney read the clause like a conductor reading a score. The People Council becomes a standing committee with a budget, a regular meeting schedule authority to halt operations for up to 30 minutes, for safety and dignity, and minutes published within 24 hours. He paused for breath like resting between movements. Vote Whitman, said, tapping his pen 3 times. Hands went up. Daniel, Nadia, Elaine, Whitman. A flicker of hesitation from the Gray shareholder row. Then Marianne Cole raised her hand, and the others followed. Passed. No applause. The room simply exhaled like a string tuned at last to pitch. Downstairs, an electronic board rolled the final keep counting numbers. Staff lounges certified 1212 maintained 30 consecutive days. Backfill hours in practice, 722 per month. Attrition, 19%. Phase 2 wage package deposited. Childcare stipend. 60/60 in use added licensed provider list and fee fund. Jay Lee jogged in from his morning class shirt still creased and submitted his final project for shift management to the People Council, a sample schedule with default backfill blocks and a rationale for why breaks aren't a perk. "Sign here," Clara said, handing him a blue ink pen. Jay signed slanted script, then looked up. "Thanks for the living hours." Clara shook her head, smiling. "Thanks for counting." Marta set down a tray of homemade butter cookies, no flowers, no ribbons, just the smell of butter, flour, and sugar. Hugh Nolan arrived early, safety notebook worn at the edges in hand. He no longer held a manager's title, but stood straight in a different way. "I want to report on the first training," he said. "I taught the crew how to stop themselves when needed, how to set out chairs, and how not to alter hours." Quinn, the young woman with the power cords on the storm night, sat in the back and gave a small thumbs up. He nodded back. His hand no longer shook. Elaine placed a clear acrylic placard before everyone. "If you're tired, sit in English and Vietnamese, since many on the team spoke Vietnamese and Spanish. From today on," she said, "this sign is a required symbol at every site." Valerie offered, "I'll call a few designers." No embellishment, just legible. Elaine smiled. "Then come sit in on my edit meeting." Valerie nodded, as comfortable with the verb sit and listen as with a major scale. Midday, a group of reporters came for interviews. Richard Slate stood before the wooden "Keep Our Word" 90 days sign, no notes. On the first night, he said, "I thought power was saying things. Turns out power is being able to live with what you've said." He held up a small box, a gold watch. "I don't wear it anymore. It's louder than what I need to hear." He placed the box into the Arts and Work Fund to be auctioned. Not to atone, he murmured to Miles alone, but to lower the noise. Nadia presented the numbers like a rising harmony, costs up, waste down, productivity, steady accidents at zero since the 30-minute stop authority began. The last line event revenue stable despite fewer flowers because return rate rose 8%. Someone asked why. Nadia shrugged. "Because people sit when tired and stand when it's time. The rest falls into rhythm." Toward evening, St. Agnes opened early. Sister Joan set a row of wooden chairs beside the old upright with its chipped lid and beautifully husky voice. Lena hugged the toy keyboard with the missing battery cover, beaming, "Mom, I'll play Do, Re, Mi." "Play it slowly," Clara said, "so there's room for others to breathe." The 90-day concert had no pricey lights, just a few candles set safely far back. Miles sat in the last row, no camera, only a notebook with a frayed cover. Whitman arrived with a thin envelope, a capital gift so the People Council would have a long-term budget. He slipped the envelope into the donation box and sat quietly, both hands on his cane. Marianne Cole came too, no fur, no labels. She leaned back in her seat, as if she'd learned something simple. Sitting is a civic act. "Before I play," Clara said into a small mic, "I want to take roll, not of people, but of habits." The room chuckled softly. She raised one finger. "1 count before you decide. A second. 2 set out a chair before you demand. A third. 3 apologize with action." She lowered her hand and touched the toy keys. The first note was round and clean, the moment returning like a friend who knows the way home. On the second pass, Clara nodded to Jay. He stepped up, opened his notebook, and read 4 lines like a poem. Shift changes 24 hours ahead. Backfill 10%. Staff lounges with enough chairs. Exits clear. The room laughed the warm laugh of recognizing what's right. Marta set a plate of cookies on the table by the piano. The attached note scribbled, "Don't throw away others' food." Hugh leaned against the wall, hands in coat pockets, nodding as Quinn walked by, not with cords this time, but a stack of tickets for listeners coming in. Richard stood at the doorway, not pushing forward. He held the door for people now and then pulling it close so the wind wouldn't lash. Each time his palm touched the wood, some inner tempo settled. Midway through, he sat in an empty chair. No one stared. And precisely because of that, for the first time in years, he saw what needed seeing without being seen. When the piece ended, no one clapped right away. They kept still for one more beat, a new habit, letting the last sound die completely before another began. Then applause rose but didn't linger, leaving room for a final word. Clara stood smiling. "We're not ending today. We're ending a piece, so the next one starts in key." She turned to Richard. "You've kept your word in your way. Keep going." He nodded. Less image, more weight. Miles stepped into the aisle, raising his notebook instead of a camera. "I'd like to read an unpublished caption, 'The Chairs That Save.' If anyone asks the best photo of these 90 days, I'd say the one not taken. It's the moment a tired person sat at the right time and a strong person stood in the right place." The room laughed, then nodded. On the way out, Sister Joan rehung the sign, "If you're tired, sit." Lena, hand in her mother's, looked up, "Mom, after we keep our word, what do we do next?" Clara thought a second and answered, "Keep going and keep counting." The girl nodded solemn as if learning a new note. Outside New York, exhaled air no longer harsh. On the glass wall of Slate Properties headquarters, a small plaque was mounted, "Keep our word." Keep counting. Not a campaign slogan, but the building's operating instructions. In Container A, the folding chair was wiped clean, folded tight against the wall like a sentry at ease. At St. Agnes, the upright waited quietly for morning. In a fourth-floor walk-up, Clara turned out the light and set an alarm for the early shift. The tiny tick matched Lena's breathing. Somewhere a few blocks away, Richard sat by an open window, no watch, hearing the wind as a natural metronome. Jake closed his book. Marta washed the cookie tray. Hugh added one more line to his notebook. Valerie set a reminder. Sit and listen. Thursday, and Whitman slipped the wooden pen into his coat pocket. And the story begun with a tray set down carried by a round, clean note, and grown into a shared habit, closed not with a period, but with a tie, so that tomorrow when someone somewhere is tired, they sit. When someone somewhere speaks, they keep. Keep your word, keep counting, and keep playing few notes in tune. From a tray, put down to an empty chair set out. Keep our word has moved from a first note to a collective habit, and each of us has a place to sit at the right moment. Stand at the right time, then keep counting. Keep counting. A question for you. Where will you set your first empty chair tomorrow for yourself or for someone beside you? If this story touched you, please, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Turn on the bell so you don't miss the next chapters.